Hey friends, I'm Wanda. I'm 28 years old, and I love playing Minecraft to relax and reading some of the most interesting Reddit stories. So get comfy, settle in, and let's enjoy today's story together. Holy shit, Reddit. I'm still shaking with rage as I type this, so bear with me if this gets a little scattered. I'm 29 female, and my brother Kyle is 32 male. We've always had what I thought was a pretty solid relationship. Typical sibling stuff. Some competition growing up, but generally supportive of each other as adults. Or so I fucking thought. Background. I work in software development and have been pretty disciplined about saving money since I graduated college. Not because I'm rich or anything, but because I watched my parents struggle financially when we were kids and swore I'd never be in that position. I live modestly, drive a 2018 Honda that's paid off, and have been steadily building my emergency fund for the past 6 years. Kyle, on the other hand, has always been more of a live in the moment type. He's a freelance graphic designer, which means his income is unpredictable at best. Great months followed by terrible months, feast or famine lifestyle. He's also got expensive tastes, always buying the latest tech, eating out constantly, taking spontaneous weekend trips he can't afford. I've buylaid him out more times than I can count over the years. Small amounts here and there. Sometimes a few hundred for rent when clients didn't pay on time. Last month, I had been saving for a down payment on a house. Nothing fancy, just a small starter home where I could build some equity instead of throwing money at rent forever. I'd finally hit $15,000 in my house fund, a huge milestone that had taken me 2 years of careful budgeting and side hustles to reach. I was so proud of that number, checking my savings account like it was going to disappear. The money was in a separate savings account that I rarely touched, but Kyle knew about it because I'd mentioned my house hunting plans during family dinners. What I didn't know was that he'd been paying attention to a lot more than just my enthusiasm about homeownership. 3 weeks ago, I was doing my monthly budget review. Yeah, I'm that person who tracks every expense in a color-coded spreadsheet. Don't judge me. I pulled up my savings account online and nearly choked on my coffee. $11,500. My house fund, which should have been sitting pretty at $15,000, was down by exactly $3,500. My first thought was bank error. Had to be. I don't touch that account except to deposit money, and I definitely hadn't made any large withdrawals. I called the bank immediately, already preparing my "someone must have hacked my account" speech. "Ma'am, I see a withdrawal here from 3 weeks ago. It was made in person at our downtown branch with proper ID and account information. The signature on file matches our records." "That's impossible. I haven't been to that branch in months. Would you like me to pull up the security footage from that date?" 20 minutes later, I was staring at grainy black and white footage of my brother Kyle casually walking up to the teller window, handing over what appeared to be my ID, and walking out with an envelope that contained $3,500 of my money. My brother, my own fucking brother, had stolen from me. But here's the kicker. How did he get my ID? I started tearing apart my apartment looking for my wallet, and that's when I remembered. 2 months ago, Kyle had crashed at my place after a particularly brutal breakup with his girlfriend Madison. He'd been drinking, crying, the whole dramatic mess. I'd let him sleep it off on my couch and went to work the next morning before he woke up. He must have taken photos of my ID while I was asleep or grabbed the information he needed somehow. The bank later confirmed that he'd used a fake ID with his photo, but my information, which explained why the signature matched. He'd probably been practicing forging my signature. This wasn't some impulsive mistake. This was premeditated theft. I spent the rest of that day going through my recent interactions with Kyle, looking for signs I'd missed. Had he seemed more desperate lately, more stressed about money? And then it hit me. He'd been asking weird questions about my savings account. How much interest are you getting? Do you ever check the balance online? What branch do you usually go to? I thought he was just making conversation, maybe considering getting serious about his own finances for once. Instead, he was casing me like I was a fucking bank he was planning to rob. The violation was indescribable. This wasn't just theft. It was betrayal by someone I trusted completely. Someone who'd eaten dinner at my table every Sunday for months. Someone I'd confided in about my dreams of homeownership. I called him immediately. No answer. Texted him, "We need to talk. Now." Read receipt, no response. Called again. Straight to voicemail. He was avoiding me, which meant he knew exactly what this was about. I drove to his apartment. A trendy loft downtown that he definitely couldn't afford on his inconsistent freelance income, which now made a lot more sense. His car wasn't there, but his neighbor mentioned seeing him loading up a bunch of stuff earlier in the day. The coward was running. I spent the next 2 days calling everyone in our family, asking if they'd heard from Kyle. My mom was worried. He seemed stressed last time I talked to him, but he said work was going well. My dad was confused. Why are you looking for him? Did something happen? I didn't want to drop the bomb about the theft until I talked to Kyle directly. Family drama is messy enough without accusations flying before anyone knows the whole story. Finally, on day 3, Kyle called me back. "Hey sis, sorry I missed your calls. I've been crazy busy with this new project." And cut the shit, Kyle. I know what you did. Silence, long, guilty silence that told me everything I needed to know. I don't know what you're talking about. $3,500 withdrawn from my savings account 3 weeks ago. Ring any bells. More silence. Then, in the smallest voice I'd ever heard from him, "Shit, shit, shit. That's all you have to say." Kyle, you stole from me. You used my ID to steal my money from my account. Look, Olivia, I can explain. Oh, please do. Please explain how my brother decided that stealing from me was acceptable. What came next was the most infuriating conversation of my entire life. I was desperate, okay. Madison left me. I got behind on rent, and this client stiffed me for a huge project. I was about to get evicted. I panicked, so you decided to steal from your sister instead of, I don't know, asking for help. You would have said no. You don't know that. I've helped you before, not this much. And you don't need it as much as I did. There it was. The sentence that made my vision go red with rage. I don't need it as much as you did. Kyle, that was my house fund. I've been saving for 2 years. I've been eating ramen and skipping vacations and driving a car with 150,000 miles on it to save that money. But you have a good job. You make steady money. You could save it again. I was about to be homeless. The entitlement was breathtaking. In his mind, because I had been responsible with money and he hadn't, that somehow made my savings fair game for his emergencies. So instead of being an adult and asking your family for help, you decided to commit a felony. It's not a felony if it's family. It's literally identity theft and bank fraud. KYLE. I was going to pay you back. When? With what money? You just said you're broke. I have some big projects coming up. You always have big projects coming up. And they never fucking materialize. This went on for over an hour. Kyle cycling through every excuse in the book. It was temporary. He was desperate. I wouldn't understand because I've never struggled. He was planning to tell me eventually. He thought I wouldn't notice right away. But the core of his argument never changed. I didn't need the money as much as he did, so taking it was somehow justified. Kyle, do you understand that you could go to prison for this? You're not going to call the cops on your own brother. The confidence in his voice was what did it for me. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't ashamed. He was annoyed that he'd been caught and irritated that I was making a big deal out of it. Watch me. Olivia, come on. We can work this out. Family doesn't call cops on family. Family doesn't steal from family either. But here we are. I hung up and immediately called the bank to report the fraud. Then I called my parents. That conversation was its own special kind of hell. Honey, are you sure? Kyle would never. Mom's voice was already shaky. Mom, I have security footage of him at the bank. This isn't a misunderstanding. Dad was more direct. How much? $3,500. Jesus Christ. From your house fund. At least Dad understood the magnitude of what Kyle had done. Mom was still in denial mode. Maybe he borrowed it and forgot to ask. You know how scattered he's been since the breakup. Mom, he used a fake ID with my personal information to withdraw money from my account without permission. That's not borrowing, that's theft. The family WhatsApp group exploded that night. Kyle had apparently called everyone after our conversation, spinning some sob story about how I was overreacting and threatening to destroy the family over money. My cousin Sarah, can't you guys work this out without involving police? My Aunt Linda, family should stick together during hard times. My Uncle Mike, maybe Kyle just needed help and didn't know how to ask. The number of family members who seemed to think grand theft was just a minor family squabble was fucking astounding. The next few days were like watching my family implode in real time. Kyle had launched a full-scale charm offensive, calling every relative we had to share his version of events. According to him, I was a heartless sister who cared more about money than family, threatening to send him to prison over what he called a misunderstanding between siblings. My phone was ringing constantly with family members trying to play peacekeeper. Grandma Rose, sweetie, I know you're upset, but Kyle is such a good boy. Maybe he just made a mistake. Grandma, he committed identity theft. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. But prison, honey, that seems so harsh for family. My cousin Jake, look, Kyle fucked up, but involving cops, that's going to follow him forever. Maybe he should have thought about that before he decided to steal from me. Come on, Liv. You know he's been struggling. Cut him some slack. The most infuriating part was how Kyle had positioned himself as the victim in all of this. He was telling everyone that I was trying to ruin his life over money, and that he'd offered to pay me back, but I was being vindictive and cruel. What he wasn't telling them was that his offer to pay me back consisted of him saying he'd give me $200 a month when he could afford it, with no timeline, no contract, and no acknowledgement that what he'd done was wrong. My mom called crying. Olivia, please, he's your brother. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? Mom, this isn't about forgiveness. This is about consequences. Kyle stole from me, and he's not even sorry. He thinks he was justified. He's sorry. He called me crying about how terrible he feels. Then why hasn't he apologized to me? Why is he telling everyone I'm the problem instead of taking responsibility? He's scared, honey. You threatened to have him arrested. I didn't threaten anything. I reported a crime that was committed against me. The manipulation was masterful. Honestly, Kyle had managed to turn a situation where he was clearly the perpetrator into one where I was the villain for not just rolling over and accepting his theft. But the real kicker came when I found out how Kyle had been spending my money. Remember how he claimed he was about to be evicted and desperately needed the cash for rent? Yeah, that was bullshit. His neighbor mentioned seeing him loading a brand new 75-inch TV into his apartment the day after he stole my money. His social media showed him at expensive restaurants, posting pictures of craft cocktails and artisanal appetizers. He'd bought a new MacBook Pro. I could see it in the background of his Instagram stories. Kyle hadn't stolen my money because he was facing homelessness. He'd stolen it because he wanted nice things and didn't want to wait or work for them. When I confronted him with this evidence, his response was peak Kyle. I needed to maintain my professional image for clients. The old laptop was embarrassing, and I had to eat out for networking meetings. You stole money for networking dinners. You don't understand what it's like being freelance. Image matters. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of his social media posts showing his purchases, receipts I could find, witness statements from neighbors about the TV delivery. If this was going to court, I wanted ironclad evidence of what he'd actually done with my money. My dad, to his credit, was furious when he found out about Kyle's spending spree. That little shit told us he was about to lose his apartment. He lied to everyone, Dad. This was never about desperation. This was about wanting stuff he couldn't afford, and thinking my savings account was his personal ATM. I'm going to kill him. Get in line. 2 weeks after I filed the police report, Kyle finally realized that I wasn't bluffing, and this wasn't going away. The detective assigned to my case had contacted him for an interview, and suddenly the reality of potential criminal charges was hitting home. He showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Olivia, we need to talk. Unless you're here to confess and return my money, we have nothing to discuss. I have most of it. At 2,800. I can get you 2,800 right now. What happened to the other 700, Kyle? Silence. Let me guess. It's tied up in that fancy TV you bought. I can sell some stuff. No, Kyle. I want all of it. $3,500, plus the fees the bank charged me for the fraud investigation, plus the interest I lost while this money was out of my account. That's not fair. I said I'd pay you back. Fair. You want to talk about what's fair? I pulled out my laptop and showed him the spreadsheet I'd created. Every meal I'd skipped to save money. Every social event I'd declined because I was being disciplined about my budget. Every cheap generic brand I'd bought instead of name brand. 2 years of small sacrifices that had added up to the money he'd stolen in one afternoon. This is what fair looks like, Kyle. Me working my ass off and living below my means to save for something important. You stealing it so you could buy toys and eat at fancy restaurants is not fair. For the first time in this entire ordeal, Kyle actually looked ashamed. I fucked up. Yes, you did. I don't know how to fix this. You start by returning every cent you stole. Then you get therapy to figure out why you think other people's money belongs to you. Then you rebuild the trust you destroyed by being honest with our family about what actually happened. And then you'll drop the charges. Maybe, if you make this right and show me that you understand how seriously you screwed up. Kyle sold his new TV, returned the laptop, and somehow scraped together the full amount plus fees. It took him 3 weeks, and I'm pretty sure he had to borrow money from friends to make it happen. But he did it. The money is back in my account, and I've since moved it to a different bank with additional security measures that Kyle doesn't know about. Kyle eventually came clean to the family about what he'd really done with the money and why. The desperate for rent story fell apart pretty quickly when people started asking questions. Some relatives were horrified that they'd been defending him without knowing the full story. Others doubled down on the family should forgive family narrative. I decided not to pursue criminal charges after Kyle returned the money and wrote a formal apology letter acknowledging what he'd done and why it was wrong. But our relationship is fundamentally changed. I don't trust him anymore, and I'm not sure I ever will again. Update 6 months later. Kyle has been going to therapy and claims he's working on his impulse control and sense of entitlement. He pays for his own meals when we have family dinners now and hasn't asked me for money once since the incident. I bought my house 3 months ago, a cute little 2-bedroom with a security system and a safe where I keep important documents. Kyle wasn't invited to the housewarming party. Some family members think I'm holding a grudge. Others understand that trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. Kyle and I are civil at family events, but we're not close anymore. Maybe we will be again someday. But that's going to be up to him to earn back. I've learned that being financially responsible doesn't make you an ATM for irresponsible family members, and that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most likely to take advantage of your trust. Edit for everyone asking, yes, I changed banks and set up additional security measures. No, I haven't loaned Kyle money since then, and I won't be doing so in the future. Edit 2, to those saying I should have just forgiven him immediately because family is family. Family members don't steal from each other. Actions have consequences, regardless of DNA. What would you have done if your sibling stole thousands of dollars from you and then blamed you for not needing it as much?